saves us from having to install a brand new system for this homeowner. They're able to just replace the front 10, 15 feet of these lines that were next to the tree and take care of it. Okay, yeah, this is where I was going to go. So that's why we probed. We probed it so we don't have to replace systems for homeowners that don't really need one. Like I said, it was just a matter of getting the roots out of there and replacing that pipe. That gravel's still great shape. So that service provider did a good job. Tanks, and this is what I want water level pre and post I talked about. See, this thing's all the way down to, it should be up, up here. Same way over here, you can actually see, well, there's roots in this one. You can see there used to be a T here. It's gone, but the water level should be up there. Make sure we know what the tank is before, because we just might be dye testing a tank that may never go out to the storm drain, may never go out to a leach field. We don't, that's why we check the tank before, so we know if it goes to a storm drain, that's fine, but if it goes to the leach field, we want to make sure we at least hydraulically load that correctly. Another thing, no, this was a really rainy event. I had to use quite a bit of dye, but it eventually came out, because look how much water is flowing out of that pipe. If I just used a minimal amount of dye or not enough tablets, I'd probably never see it coming out there. So that's why we want to make sure that we use enough for whatever but if it's dry, that it's one thing. If it's raining, you have a lot of water flowing through storm drains. Make sure you use enough that you're actually visually able to see dye. You could, if you have dye that fluoresces, you can always take a sample of it and take it home and put it under a black light. It'll glow if you can't tell visually. Filter beds. We need to make sure that we locate the discharge location of filter beds. Those, see if they're free of debris, see if they're able to flow. Because as we're dye testing these, we need to make sure, we need to time how long it takes either for the dye to get out or water to start flowing. That way we can see what type of, it may be a matter of what type of stone is in there. Is it grits? Is it 57s? That's going to depend on how fast that water moves through there. If it's 57s, then it's not cleaning that water at all. It's going to pretty much fail at that point. If it comes out too quickly, like I said, we'll probably have somebody dig down to see what's actually there. And like I said, if it's too large, it's probably not going to be a functioning system. So definitely find the filter bed discharge location. I know some of these old systems are going to be really hard to find, but make sure they're free and actually able to flow. And time how long, from your start to finish, when you actually see that dye come out. So if I see filter beds on this report saying, whatever, 400 square foot filter beds, tell me at that point, no dye, during the whole inspection or, water. And tell me what quality of water. It says observable effluent discharge, clear, black, cloudy, odor. Note that. That tells us a lot of what's going on.
And that time should include the time through the tank as well.
Yes.
So we don't want to just squirt it in the box, shove a hose in it. It's going to come out quick on a lot of these older systems.
Yeah,
Grits, it'll come out quick.
It needs that time to go through the tank. That's how it needs to go through the tank, through whatever else, and then all the way through. So not from the edge, backside of the tank. You want to make sure you dye test it from inside and let it go through the whole tank. This is another thing. I know some issues with some areas with deeper storm drains. This is up in Washington Township. I was out at a system, dye testing in front of the house. There's nothing. There's water flowing, crystal clear, looks fine. I'm like, okay, so I walked on down the road. This is probably like 2 houses down. I see another storm drain like this in somebody's driveway. So I continue to walk down. I look in there. Actually, I took a picture. Look inside. I took a picture between those grates. Here's where the upper line is coming in at, here. And then down below, you can see my dye, probably about 6 feet down further, is another deeper storm drain. So make sure we walk, not just to the edge of the property. You may have to go 2 or 3 houses down to see that. But make sure you know, if you're not familiar with the area or you don't know if there's deeper storm drains or anything, like I said, there's a, probably 2 or 3 feet below ground or something here, or probably about 2 feet. And then on down through there, 6 feet deeper, there's a whole other line that was carrying this discharge from the tank that was noticed. And it eventually showed itself. When, as this dropped in elevation, there's catch basins out on the end of the road. It actually showed up there eventually. So if you're just looking one house down, two houses down. Like I said, if you never noticed that, you wouldn't see it all the way down at the end of the road. So make sure we do our best to give these people a good inspection. And he said, look, we never know when you're going to have something goofy like this, a shallow storm drain and then a deeper one 6 feet further down. Another thing, when you're doing inspections, you're going to notice some servicing issues. This one has not been serviced in a while. When I went out there, it wasn't even running. You can see as they used it, these filters in here are probably clogged. That's why it's all stained all the way up to, all the way up to the top almost. Another thing here, you're going to see upflow filters. We need to know when these upflow filters aren't working properly. If you don't know how they're supposed to work, make sure you get from the manufacturer how these things are supposed to work. But this one's totally just corroded. It's just flowing straight through. Sometimes you'll see homeowners may, I don't know, or it may just rot off. It should be like a big weir or a trough here. It goes down, pushes up the sides, and then it overflows into a trough, which then goes out. So if these things are rotted, or if it's bypassing this gravel filters on each side, then it's not functioning properly, and thus be considered a nuisance that we'll get into here in a bit. So make sure that you know how these things are supposed to look, and make sure that they're operating how they're supposed to. If not, it's going to be considered a nuisance and it will need to be fixed. All right, page 3 of the report. We did make some changes here just to clarify. About the report completion. We put on the top here, underneath the very top, underneath the property address, this report is not complete until a sewage system evaluation certificate of review is attached. What I see and what realtors get mad at me about is when the service provider emails me and emails the realtor, and the realtor just goes and runs with it. They don't know that there's anything supposed to follow it. So when I look at it and say that corrections needed, or I have another sanitarian go out and just verify some things, and they end up failing it, that's when a realtor really gets mad, is when, hey, we got to report this, that it passed. I had the homeowner sign off on it, the buyer sign off on it, and I get something from you saying, hey, it needs to be totally replaced. That's when they get mad. So that's why we try to help this for realtors, but some realtors don't know that they're supposed to have a certificate of sewage system certificate of review. So that's why I added that. I don't know how many people look at it. This is the page that most realtors probably look at, and homeowners. Also, down at the bottom, this was on the old forms also, but I just straightened it up a little bit. Further health department recommendations can be found on the certificate of review. So it's kind of referencing the certificate that is not included in your evaluation report. Now we did add another thing here, not functioning properly. This is what we're going to go through, and that was one of the handouts. It was 3718-011 from the Ohio Revised Code. This is what we consider a nuisance. It talks about components not working. Sewage systems not operating properly due to a missing component, incorrect settings, mechanical or electrical failure. So if one of those things are not running like they should, UV light, whatnot, that's considered a nuisance. There is a blockage sewage treatment system component in a pipe that causes backup, affecting the treatment process, and hitting proper plumbing drainage, which would be inside the house. But a missing component could be like that upflow filter. It's not operating like it should. It's bypassing, so that's considered a nuisance. It actually goes into a little bit more. I think we'll talk about that in the next one here too. So we'll skip ahead to the aeration units. Pre-77 aerators. I don't know if a lot of you may have not received this, but Laura emailed this out to, and it's included on the back page. I double-sided the nuisance with this one. This talks about, Laura sent a update out November 17, 2011 to all service providers about all aeration units inspected that were installed prior to 77 with or without a permit must have correct operational equipment and be sampled. The sample location must be adequate. Installing a sample box could be required. you must record the actual location the sample was taken in the comment section on your inspection report. So when you sample that, and it goes further on into that, you can read, like I said, they're over there, you can read, it goes Ohio Revised Code, B and C. B references fecal coliform at 5,000 has anything greater, and anything greater than 1030 E. coli counts is considered a nuisance. So if it's less than that, okay. If it's greater than that, these pre-77, then it's considered a nuisance. And it'll be-
So Jason, for us, when we're on a point of sale inspection, how do we handle that? I mean, first of all, how do we?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys sample any? Probably not. I don't know. How are we gonna handle it?
We just mark it down and we.
Then I'll kick it back saying, unacceptable minor issue, need to, or actually,
Everything 77, get tested.
yeah. So I mean, there isn't that much, but there are quite a few still. I mean, some have motors that are bolted into the top of the lid of the tank. I mean, you'll see some of those that need to be sampled. I'm not sure as far as sampling. I know we sample and we take them
Yeah,
to the lab to get.
we could conduct that sample if you're unable or not able to find a way to do that. So we could help you with that issue. Trying to think of what
Where did 5,000 come?
Are we allowed to sample?
That's in the new.
You want us to sample?
Yeah, you can sample. Yeah, as long as you do it correctly. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
5,000 is the nuisance code.
Yeah.
Code?
Yeah.
I'm used to seeing 2,000 monthly limit.
That's a good point, Fred. What Fred's thinking of is the NPDS standard. There is actually, when it comes to the law, you're allowed to be above the NPDS standard and still not be a public health nuisance. This is defined by law. So this is not in the rules, but this is law. The state legislature set guidelines for us to say you are causing a nuisance or you're not causing a nuisance. One of those is when you hit 5,000, you're considered a nuisance. When you're discharging untreated sewage and there's dye and it's odor, that's a nuisance. When you're over 1030 E. coli counts, that's a nuisance. So that's defined by law. And I probably should mention, the reason why we even had to bring this up is because there are some individuals who they don't want to be the bad guy. We're just asking you to give a accurate assessment of what you see, check the box that matches what you see. Unfortunately, what was happening was, there were systems installed, and you would say, or individuals would say, operating as designed. Okay. Well, if you got a tank and a tail line, yeah, it was put in that way and it's operating as designed, but that's by law a nuisance. So we were getting people saying those were okay, and we kept having to overturn it. So it made you look foolish and made us look like the monsters. So if we're on the same page, that would be best, and the same page as this. So when we get into some of the minor things, boxes are deteriorating, that's not on here. We'll say, we recommend you fix the box, but it's not now. If the box is collapsed, it's a missing component now, and then it becomes a nuisance. So we're not getting into you must replace a deteriorating box because it's not a public health nuisance by law. We're trying to stick with just public health nuisance. We'll give recommendations, and you do too, and that's great, but we're only going to deal with public health nuisance. Jason's got a stack of stuff that we have to follow up with. If we had a stack of softeners and half-eaten boxes, we'd never get anything done. So we'll just stick with these.
So prior to 1977, any off-lot discharging system will have to be sampled then with the inspection?
Yes.
Is
And
there a
Fred,
line in here for that?
pardon me?
Is there a line in the report for that? Or?
I don't believe
No,
there is.
it just talks about, well,
Page 5.
yeah, that's right.
Oh, right out of the room.
No, but it says in here, Laura addressed that, you must record the actual location in the comment section of your inspection report.
What most commonly happens, this is kind of the most common occurrence. It's not often these things are actually running and working. It's more often that they're not, and they've taken the motor out 20 years ago. So here again, we're kind of facing, all right, if they put that motor into that tank, and actually we're going to get into this a little bit. If you put that motor in that tank, can it produce the proper quality of effluent? Well, you and I probably doubt it. But that homeowner is going to, some homeowners are going to want the opportunity to try it. And I really have to let them try. So even though we sit here and say, oh, it's not worth your money, it's not worth the try, we have to let them try.